Welcome to the HU Move Makers podcast, where we highlight folks that are blazing the trail and making moves in Howard culture. Welcome to the HU Move Maker podcast, where we highlight Howard folks that are making moves and blazing the trail in their respective industry. Today, we got a very special guest. This brother is a licensed attorney in the state of Louisiana. State of Louisiana, works K-12 charter school, regional director of operations for Catapult Learning LLC. In his time at Howard, he was in Phi Sigma Pi, pledged Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Beta Chapter. He was on the baseball team, but two-time Howard grad. Got his MBA from Howard in accounting. Also got his law degree from Tulane, so he went back home. So been a lawyer since 2010. But right now, he's finding himself working back in education. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, man, David Anthony Durand Jr.
The whole government name, huh? Thank you, the whole government name. Thank you for having me, man. Thank you for having me, man.
The whole thing, man. So, man, it's a bunch of places where we could start, man. You know, obviously right now, if we talking about this current moment, man, we could talk about Trump. We could talk about your line brother, Durand. I'm sure you get them questions all the time.
Every day, man. Who
is, I guess you would say, the highest ranking Black person in the White House.
One of them, yeah.
One of them. You know, we could talk about the 15th year anniversary of Katrina. You know, we could talk about voter registration. We can talk about charter school versus public school. We could talk about, is the education system failing Black folks?
Let's dive in, man.
You know, it's so many things we could talk about, Dave.
Let's dive in.
So, you know, let's start right here, man. Let's talk about this virtual learning and what's going on, because what I see a lot of kids being left behind, man. You know, even here, man. You know, I was a teacher for 7 years in CPS.
Okay.
And a lot of kids don't have resources, you know, and let alone, you know, and there's no knock on anybody, but they may not come from households where parents are understanding how to teach certain things.
Yeah.
You know, and so what I see, you know, and what I feel a lot of our kids, poor kids, Black kids, whatever, however you want to label it, are getting left behind because they may not have access to the technology, and their parents may not, you know, have had the educational training, man. So as an administrator, you know, what are some of the things that you guys are doing right now to bridge that gap?
So one is the connectivity, right? So one-to-one devices, and then Wi-Fi access to all students, right? So that is not really on parents. That's just a capitalism issue. Right now in New Orleans, you have, you know, $10 a month Wi-Fi access, but you have to be current on your bill to access it. So if you have an overdue bill as a parent or a household, you can't take advantage of that. So that's the first thing that the public school system is working on. And even though we're an all charter district, on the public side, public school, you know, charter schools are public schools. That is been the primary initiative at this point. With respect to virtual learning, distance learning, this is new ground for everybody, man. I know these tools have existed for a while, you know, K-12 learning and those things have existed in Louisiana for some time, but they haven't been ubiquitous. So how do we develop teachers to deliver effective instruction to kids who can have all kind of distractions in the household, or may not have that one-to-one device access or reliable Wi-Fi? So we're working on two things. One, connectivity, and then two, professional development for teachers. The content, I would say, is the third thing. How do you keep kids engaged in the lessons with, things that were traditionally relevant, um, you know, tangible, hands-on type lessons that teachers have, created and honed over years in their practice that they just can't do. So all
So
of these things.
what's the demographic of the school that you or you
Oh man. So we serve at Catapult. So we serve primarily non-public schools. So private schools.
Mhm.
There's a voucher system here in Louisiana. I serve the two most populous parishes. I say 80% of my kids are um, so they Black or Hispanic.
And
Um,
is this low income?
yeah, definitely, because most of the schools depend on the voucher program, and you have to be beneath a certain income level to qualify for the voucher. So yeah.
And what's your role? I know you're regional director, but like if you can break down some of your responsibilities, what do they include?
So I got into the business and I'm still in the business. It's the business of education, right? I don't consider myself an instructional leader. My role is to make sure the instructional leadership has all of the tools that they need to deliver quality instruction, and that all of the barriers or the transactional costs to provide an instructional education are not their concern. Um, so I handle essentially operations and I let the educators educate.
So when I was a teacher, man, and I taught 4 years, I did teach 4 years in a charter school, 3 years in a public school. It was always this like disconnect between administrators and teachers, especially when an administrator like didn't spend time in the classroom.
Mhm.
Did you ever encounter that?
Yeah. So Uh, I I got pulled kicking and screaming, man. So as I joined, as I got closer and closer to the school building, one of the things that was important to the people who were my supervisors and managers was that yes, you do need to engage in the classroom. I had to learn teacher development. I had to learn pedagogy. I had to learn curriculum. So I get it. But I do remember that first day when I went into education. I did a sample teach for a seventh grade summer school math class, and I got ran out the building. Like I'm not built for this. I want to
Mhm.
contribute. I need to understand it, and yes, I have been developing and working to improve my skills and develop my skills from an educational standpoint. But there are two sides of it, right? Teachers don't run buses. They don't serve lunches. They don't, maintain the school grounds or facilities or anything like that. All of those things need to happen.
Mhm.
And I would much rather the people who are responsible for instruction focus on instruction and just let me deal with plumbing issues or electrical, that kind of stuff.
So how is now that we know that Corona and everything is happening, this whole distance learning. How do you evaluate teachers? Because teachers are, at least in Illinois, heavily evaluated, especially like reading, math, and science teachers on like test taking.
Yeah.
And this whole thing kind of hit at the end of the year, a time when teachers kind of unwind and are supposed to be like on quote unquote vacation.
Yeah.
How are you guys grading teachers now that
So
you?
in Louisiana, they gave everybody a free pass. They didn't do end of the year testing. So we have a statewide accountability system where every school and every district gets a letter grade based on student performance on standardized tests at the end of the year. So they essentially tabled that issue for both school district
Mm,
performance and teacher evaluation. Going into it, the issues we're considering, how reliable is the data going to be if kids are doing the assessments remotely? You can't actively monitor a student at home who's taking a standardized test online. You don't even know if it's that student taking the test. You don't know if they're getting help from a parent or another sibling in the household. So all of these issues, honestly, are still being figured out as we speak. Options that are being recommended are having shorter assessments, so kids can have the mental focus to get through a 20 or 30-minute exam. But is that going to give you reliable data on where that student is performing? If you have the longer assessment, which would give you more reliable data, is it reliable? Again, because you can't be sure that it's the student who's locked in and focusing for 90 minutes at a time on the screen, for 4 different subjects in 2 weeks. So I think what I've seen from the school districts that I work with, people are willing to explore, test, let's figure out solutions together. Some of the federal and state regulations have relaxed, and this is uncharted water for everybody who works in education, especially here in New Orleans specifically. None of the public schools, we're an all charter district, and the public school system has said nobody's starting in person until at least, I think they pushed it back till September 18th, mid-September, early October. So, I mean, we just can't have the same evaluation mechanisms as we did, and what we considered previously a traditional school district.
Welcome to the Go Fish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Go Fish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. I mean, what was your education like coming up in New Orleans?
Yeah, so there were 2 different public school systems. So it's crazy, man. So up until the time I was, 18, 19 years old, I thought my parents just lied to the school district and said our address was my dad's boss's address. I went to Catholic schools very early on, but once I was in like 3rd grade, I went to the white public school. We were just at the white public school. I knew my dad's boss lived out there, but it turns out they got a waiver to not have me go, and my brothers go to our district school, which is way out in New Orleans East. We went to a school in Lakeview, and then I went to a magnet school. My brothers went to a private, Catholic high school. So it was 2 different school systems, man. I mean, Howard, the people from New Orleans came from, McMain or McDonough 35 or Ben Franklin. We had one dude that came from John McDonough, which is where my dad went, but one dude. It was just 4 or 5 public high schools in New Orleans out of 20, 25, where people were expected to go to college. It's a bit different now, in the sense that all of the high schools have college prep programs, and if you apply yourself, you can go there. But what I've worked on, since I moved back after Katrina, every school can't be college prep high school. I mean, there are 25% of people in America graduate from 4-year universities. Where does that leave post-secondary options for the people who aren't pursuing that route? So, yeah.
So, I mean, would you say that, just think about, you had to get a waiver,
Yeah.
I mean, just think about, like, you basically had to get paperwork
Yeah.
to attend this other
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the system is like it's this thing where people say the system is not is working, and when they say that, they say the system is doing what it's supposed to do, is to disenfranchise
Mm-hmm.
black people. I mean, do you,
Yeah.
as an administrator, do you believe that?
I abundantly. So
Hmm.
again, I grew up thinking my people was hitting a lick. Like that was the thing.
Wow.
But yeah, the system is working as intended, man. If you wanted equity, you wouldn't fund schools through property taxes. You just wouldn't do those kind of things.
Yeah, that's
Um,
crazy.
yeah,
That's crazy.
I mean, you just wouldn't do that.
I think it's something like 80% of teachers in public school are white women. From your view, why don't we see more black males in the classroom?
We don't have the luxury, dog. Um, I'm extremely fortunate. Like I'm not trying to, come out the ghetto, right? I was
Hmm.
raised middle class, went to Howard. Howard had a great student aid program, so I didn't graduate college with a lot of debt. I had the freedom to make those options. If you're a black man, you graduate college with debt. You might want to start a family. You might have family who needs economic support at that time. You don't have the luxury to make, 25% less than what your market value could be in other professions. So that's one thing. I think a lot more people will go in to education and teaching if the pay was better, man. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I mean,
always said, man, I was like,
yeah,
if you can guarantee a teacher, let's say 100 grand by like year 5,
yeah,
you're gonna get a better group of people trying to be teachers. So now you can pick, and now you're gonna get more people like myself and like
yeah,
you that actually, man, I could raise, I could support my family with this. I could
yes,
live in the right neighborhood with this. But if you started me, because there's nothing wrong with where a teacher starts at. If I started, let's say 50 grand, fine. But by year 10, I shouldn't be at like 70. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
I need to be, a little bit
Yeah,
higher.
I need to be six figures. I mean, they told us to us, school to be. If you're not making 100 grand by the time you 30, you're doing something wrong, right? But
Hmm.
education, that's just not the deal. That's just not the deal, right? You might never get to that if you're a teacher, especially if
Right,
you're a teacher in, certain the South. We're not making what people
right,
making in Long Island or
right.
you know, you know, San Francisco or nothing like that. Like that's just not the case. So that's the first thing. What I do see on the positive side is I do see a lot of us who are in private industry or have these other careers, they commit to mentoring, which is
Hmm.
extremely valuable as well. So that is a thing. I know a lot of people don't like to, they feel some kind of way about it. But yeah, if you see people that look like you doing certain things and they talk to you, they build a relationship with you, the mentors are extremely important, man.
Oh, 100%, man.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on teacher union?
I've been management my whole life, man. So yeah, and it's tough. Yeah, so it's tough. When I first moved down here, the teacher union was an impediment to progress. I'm gonna just be honest. The district was moving in an all charter situation, so there wasn't a situation where the union could effect change across all of the schools. I will say, when I looked at it, everybody who had a job and wanted to teach had a job. They a lot of times made more money. Um, the salaries have gone up. They don't have a pension anymore. I don't have a pension, so nobody has a pension. So that was one thing. But um, there have been recent unions at the various charter management organizations that have formed. The charter management organizations haven't necessarily fought them. But I'm about the kids. If you're not, we are not in an adult business. This business is about students and families. And if you're not working toward those, centering those solutions, I can't really support it.
And I don't know what it's like, New Orleans, because you guys have some prominent Black colleges, but in Chicago, we don't. So saying stuff like you was going to Howard, sometimes it bring on a debate, like, why you want to go to a Black school?
Man,
You know what I'm saying?
I remember having this debate in high school. I think I might have been a junior. And it was mostly Black at my high school, even though it was a selective school. I asked, we were having this debate, and I was like, well, why would anybody want to go to HBCU? The world is not all Black. Why would you want to go to a Black? And so I got to visit Howard. Eric Causey, his parents are both PhDs, and he graduated the year before me from my high school. And I went to visit him. I'm like, I've been tripping the whole time. Like, this is where I need to be. And they just let you be. Like, if you're not thriving in an HBCU or Howard, it's because of you. It's not because of racism or nothing like that. You just get to be you, right? And really explore yourself. So that trip, it was Mardi Gras of my senior year, Mardi Gras break. We had that in New Orleans.
Y'all had Mardi Gras break?
Yeah, the schools, everything shut down. So I went to visit Howard for Mardi Gras break my senior year, and I'm like, yeah, this is for me, man. It just felt like home.
And that was for me, that was the most diverse time that I've ever had, was being at Howard. I don't want to say that I wasn't conscious of being Black, but it wasn't like now where you like always, like when I ride my bike in my neighborhood, man, I be looking at my white neighbors like, are you with me or against me? You know what I'm saying? Like, you consciously think of that. I just remember Howard just being like, everything you had, it was politics at Howard, but it wasn't, you definitely weren't being judged by your skin color. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you weren't.
Like, you was just able to just move around however you want to move around, which I love, man, and appreciate it. I mean, so I want to ask you this, man. When I was a teacher, I feel like teachers get thrown under the bus a lot. It wasn't like, now, granted, there are bad teachers, but I feel like people kind of become bad teachers. They don't like start off that way because everybody's full of energy, has these ideals. Why don't you think, or maybe you do think this, I used to always, like, for example, man, I would have like teacher report card pickup, parent teacher, whatever. I'll have like 400 kids on my roster. I might see like 10 parents, and one of the schools I taught at, it was like 70% Black, 20% Hispanic, 10% white, all low income, no. But the Hispanics, man, like Latinos, their parents was there, man. Yeah. And they didn't even speak like English. You know what I'm saying? They would be there asking me like questions through their kids. And I'm not trying to stereotype us at all because I don't want it to come off like that. But parental involvement in a child's education, I think, is not talked about enough. And I know we got circumstances where parents working a bunch of jobs and all of that.
I don't think that's it, man. So I think about my experiences here in New Orleans and what I learned when I first got back, man. And then, I knew the parents of the students that I taught. We went out. They had the Sweet 16 party, or, we had the second line together, right? So I knew them and I knew their experiences with school. Mm-hmm. If you didn't have a good experience in high school, like, why would you have a belief that your participation would matter? Like, that's not our experience with high school, like my experience at McMahon, yours at Brother Rice. That's not most of people who look like us. That's not their experience in high school. I'm not gonna say daycare or just like, go get your high school diploma and get on with it, but they didn't see putting in that work in education paying off for them. They didn't experience that people want me to thrive and succeed, on a day in and day out basis. How I think that's somewhat different, and you brought up the Hispanic population in particular, especially, first generation Hispanics. That's the American dream. They haven't lived that reality yet. So it's still a dream that can actually happen. For us, we have schools that are named after people that work to segregate schools. Like people show up in those buildings every day. So that just wasn't their experience with education. Many times. And I worked at like all of my whole high school that I worked at was Black. And we had, you get 25%, 20% of parents who show up on a parent teacher conference night. But again, I can't blame them, man, because that's just their experience with high school and the benefit that it will bestow on economic advancement or just enlightenment in general. That's not what they've seen. That's just not what they've seen.
Good stuff. So let's transition a little bit because we got, like I said before, man, it's a lot of topics I want to touch on, man. So 15 years ago, man, we got Kanye West on TV saying, George Bush doesn't care about Black people, right?
Yeah, man.
15 years later, we got that same Kanye West on TV,
standing for
saying it. He wants to basically run for president, and which is nothing wrong with anybody want to run for president, but the intent behind him wanting to run are questionable to a lot of people in our community, man. So, but let's go back. I remember when Katrina happened. Obviously, it didn't affect me the way it affected you, but I remember Lacey calling me and crying, like trying to explain to me how New Orleans is like a fishbowl, and like why even as much as she was trying to explain it, I didn't fully get it because I didn't. Prior to at that point, I had never been to New Orleans, and when I came, I came and kicked it with them for it was New Year's like 2 years ago. And so she was driving me around like all the affected areas. Now this is way after, what everything that happened, man. And she was just saying like how this town never came back, and it was no different from like when I had went to Africa, man. Like it was literally like towns that was like you felt like it was like a third world country. Then you had blocks from that. You had like houses that was worth million. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean,
my wife.
When I say Katrina to you, man, when I say Katrina to you, like what comes to mind?
I don't know what to say, man. It changed the game. So I think about it in terms of my career. I had just started my first job in education a month before it happened, right? And you don't leave a school a week after school opens, right? So I had to work the whole year in DC knowing that New Orleans was going to be ground zero for education reform because every school was closed, right? So
wow.
they're destroyed. So you get to build something from the ground up. Let's do it right. My folks evacuated to Houston. My dad is an entrepreneur. His business ended effectively, and he had to come back. He was doing like disaster recovery work, like just busybody. He was just trying to keep himself occupied until he could get back on his feet. Some parts didn't come back, man. Some parts, you talk about gentrification, it paved the way for that. And not necessarily like a pernicious act, but Black people moved away and realized, yeah, it is. Life is a little better in California, in Memphis, in Texas. Why would we go back to, broken levees and flooding and terrible schools? Like, a lot of my family just didn't come back. Most of them are in Killeen, Texas. My grandfather's in Memphis. Like, yeah. So a lot of things happen, man. A lot of things happen. When I think about the overall impact, it's just the collective trauma. Like, I don't think we've addressed a lot of, especially, young people who came back or never left and who are now, coming back, they're teenagers and college age students now. We just don't respect and understand the trauma that they had to deal with. And we're not doing enough about it. Like, they see bodies floating down the street, dog. And we sitting here talking to them in schools about tuck your shirt in your pants. Like, come on.
Yeah, and you know what? I contributed to that too when I was a teacher. Tuck your shirt in.
We all did, dog. We all did. I mean,
not even thinking about
now. You could be, we all did, man. Because when I was in school, I went to, like I said, I started in Catholic school. You had to tuck your shirt in your pants. You had to walk in the line. Mm-hmm. You had to have the font the right size and turn in your homework on time. And that, their experience is not our experience. And what our truth is that you do these things, you get to go to Howard, you get the scholarship, you get the A's and B's, and you get to graduate in the top 10% and all of that. That's not them, dog. That's just not them. Like I said, their lives were uprooted. They were sitting outside the convention center in a Superdome for a week. What does that do to a 5-year-old? And you sitting here talking to this man about, hip and lip, walking down the hallway and all that. Like, come on, man. Like, I do feel bad about that. I did work to address it. But again, I could have done more.
So that's, like anything else in America, Black people, we are affected more by any type of devastation that comes. Like you said, it like kind of paved the road for gentrification. A lot of stuff, man. I mean, and are there people that that have still never recovered from Katrina?
What do you mean by recover? I mean, people survive, though. People move on.
Like, I guess in a way that, let's say, like you could say that Black people haven't recovered from slavery. You could say that a segment of the population is not going to recover. Let's say coronavirus ends today. Mm-hmm. There's a cure. It's still going to be a portion of the population who lost jobs, who went to bankruptcy, who, whatever. Katrina, like if somebody's house gets washed away, and for a lot of people, all of your wealth is tied up in your home. Mm-hmm. let's say you just had a newborn. Like I know my cousin, he quit his job to start this transportation business in February. Right after that, coronavirus comes. He had a,
Yeah.
a well-paying job, so now he can't get a job. You know what I mean? So when I say like recovered, I mean like it's a compounding effect. That everybody can't necessarily uproot and go to another city or do whatever. I mean, are there still people, still communities that like, man, this aid never made it here? Like, when you drive around New Orleans, is that
Hmm.
still prevalent?
Yeah. So the Lower Ninth Ward is still having a challenge in recovering um, under that understanding. But what I think both Katrina did and what um, this Rona crisis is doing is showing people that it's unmasking what America is. So, like when Kanye said, uh, "W don't care about black people." Well, we always knew it, and now the quiet part is being said out loud.
I mean, do you
Um,
think that was warranted?
yeah, I mean, was it not? I mean, they didn't really save us. Like we knew we had levee issues before the storm. We knew that people would need help,
Hmm.
being evacuated, and that, oh, let's just send everybody to the football stadium. That's the solution. Like we knew all of these things going into it. That's why people of means got out. It's not like everybody, all 400,000 people in New Orleans were here waiting on Katrina to hit. It was the most um, destitute, the people who needed the most help who were left here. There
Yeah.
weren't very many, middle class people who were making $400,000, $500,000 a year sitting at the Superdome. That's not what happened. So we knew all of these things. With Rona, we
So
know.
people knew it was common knowledge that the levees was needed repair.
Yeah. I mean, yes, we've lived here our whole life.
Damn.
We've lived here our whole life, man. That's why
That's
we
crazy.
had things like evacuation orders.
Damn.
Yeah, there was an evacuation. My folks left, I think, 3 days before the storm.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't a secret.
And then, to watch on TV, I don't know, on the news they call them looters, but when you go in the grocery store trying to get food to survive, and then you're getting shot at
Yeah.
by the cops. These are people surrounded by water, doing what they can just to survive. Do you
I,
think this whole notion of white supremacy, is that a real thing?
I, I, I don't use that term. I call it right fragility. Um, this country has known from the get go that um, they can't outdo us. If Black people were ever given equity, equal status, equal footing, um, they knew what time it would be. Um, my thoughts on that is, I mean, if you look at the founding documents, it's not that it's a bad document. Like I believe in the Constitution and the amendments. What the problem is for um, the current power structure is that they never envisioned it applying to women or people of color. And if you look at it through that prism, I can see why they throwing up right now. They can't deal. It was never intended um, to apply to us or to apply to women. And now that that's the case, they don't know how to proceed.
Hmm. When we were in college, did you lean toward Republican? Is that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I'll
And
say that. Yes.
this is like '03. I mean, '99, '03. We was in college.
Hmm.
Um, so not talking about now, talking
Hmm.
about then. What attracted you to that belief then?
So
And I'm not gonna act like I was deep into politics because I
no,
wasn't.
I would. So it
But I
was.
knew at that time for a black person to say, especially young, to be like, I'm a
Mhm.
Republican. There must have been something you read or affected you to say, man, you have to be, you got to have good reason. So I'm interested in
It
that.
was this idea of rugged individualism. It was this. Yes, we talked about racism, systemic racism, how the country was founded by racists, but it wasn't at the forefront of political thought in 2000. I mean, we were talking about, Bush v. Gore. That wasn't even really a thing. Um, what I wrestled with then and still wrestle with now is the lesser of two evils. Um, it's not like the Democratic Party has been the bastion of inclusivity and liberation for people that look like me. And certainly back then, um, I was a fan of Bush. I didn't really like Gore didn't appeal to me. And then in 2004, I'm like, okay, I see what's going on with Iraq, Afghanistan. I see what they're doing with the threat alerts. I saw what's happening in the district. I'm like, we can't have 4 more years a W. So I did register in DC, well, in Virginia, to vote for Kerry. But as you mentioned, my line brother is Durand. He would call me an independent. I do believe I'm an independent, but yeah, my political leanings in the 99s and the 2000s were Republican. I'm emphatically not supportive of anyone in that party at this point. But again, I challenge folks to say, okay, is it the lesser of two evils, or do we believe we're going to make progress through this other party versus, what we have now?
And this goes back to my point of just how diverse Howard is.
Mm-hmm.
That your line brother, Jerron, is in the White House now with
Yeah.
uh with
Yeah.
Donald Trump, man. And it,
45. Yeah.
right when we was in college, Trump, we watching him on Apprentice, man. We not thinking about this
Yeah.
guy.
Not even thinking none of that. Yeah.
You know what I'm
True.
saying? We
And
not
all of
thinking
us
about
watched The Apprentice. All of us watched
yeah,
The Apprentice. Yeah.
right. Nobody's like, yeah, So we see Omarosa, who went to Howard. She's in the White House. Now you see Jerron. What's your relationship now with Jerron?
I talk to him all the time, man. I talk to him all the
Talk to him
time.
about it.
Yeah. I talk to him all the time. Before his speech, he caught some, and we're not a monolith, right? There's 9 of us on our line. We have 9 different, 8 other opinions outside of Gerard's, right? But I'm like, man, shoot your shot. Like, I get it. And I ask everybody else, I'm like, okay, if this is the current power structure we're in, it's not like Biden has this thing in a bag, right? So do you want access? You, me, all of us, we 1 or 2 text messages away from the president. Like, that's the level of access we have. So do you not want that and want hoop and holler about voting rights and like all of the stuff that's not happening? Or do you want to put a bug in somebody's ear who might be able to do something today?
Because I talked to Jerron, and I know he's worked on prison reform.
The three
He's worked
things.
on, HBCU funding.
BCUs and the go zone
Um,
and the opportunity zones. That's the three things. When 45 talk about what he's done for the blacks, he's talking about we have a Durand. Yeah, it's the same three things all the time. And going into it, Durand said, "Okay, these are the three things I want to do." So, yeah, I mean,
so as somebody who's closer to him, man, I mean, it's got to be tough for him to, because I run the Howard alumni Instagram account, man. It's about 33,000 followers. I'm
that's
sure
crazy.
99% of them are Howard alum. When I post, man, I will post, let's say, for every Durand post, I might post like 5 things on Kamala, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I post Kamala, it's all these amazing comments about X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah. Every now and then it might be somebody who shoots me a DM like, but what about her and how many black people she locked up, or she not even claiming to be black or whatever. If I post, Durand, it's like
Vitriol.
people like, who's running this account? Why are you endorsing him? It's really polar opposite. It's like, it's crazy, man. And I understand who's in office, you know what I mean? But a part of me is like, man, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight or mention him because he's in the White House. I
He's
mean,
in the
whether he likes
room.
it or not, like
He's in the room.
he's in there, man. As somebody who talks to him, I mean, what can you speak to his motive behind being in the White House?
Like I said, man, so again, this is not new
Mm-hmm.
for Durand. Going back to the time,
And I say that too. It's not new. He's been on this for 20
yeah,
plus.
he been
I've
on. He
known him for
worked.
20 years, so he's
Yeah,
been on.
he been on this. He's just worked. He's even said he grew up in a city that was run by Democrats and
Right.
was like, maybe let's do something different. So he's worked for black Republicans. He's worked for white Republicans. He has come of age in the Republican Party, right? So to some extent, he's just advanced in his career. Like it's just a natural progression of things.
Mm-hmm.
What I think we have to look at, why are we lock, stock, and barrel for the Democratic Party? Like,
Why is that though?
I
Man,
don't know. I don't
but
know.
you gotta have some opinions. I mean, you from the South, Dave. You got an
Yeah,
MBA, you got a law degree, and you work in education. You a
yeah.
unicorn. You a unicorn. And
Yes,
your wife is Ivy League, right?
yeah, she is, and
So
she's in.
Dave,
She's into that. Yeah, she has international heritage. I'll say. So yeah, um,
so why are we so
I don't know, man.
enamored with the Democratic Party? It's got to be a reason, man.
So there was a time we weren't, and it happened around the Southern strategy with Nixon and all that kind of stuff. Dog whistle politics. We literally shifted from Republican to Democrat in like the 50s and 60s. That is a thing. My question is, neither one of them are working, and we're literally being asked to choose between the lesser of two evils. And if that's the question, I think we need people on both sides because,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Welcome to the Go Fish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Go Fish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. As somebody that's from New Orleans, Drew Brees' comments,
Painful.
because Drew Brees was like,
Yeah,
he was invited to the barbecue, man.
Yeah, the barbecue. he was allowed to grill at the barbecue. Yeah, so problematic, dog. And it speaks to they don't have the same experience as us, man. It's just
Mm-hmm.
of that persuasion, they get to go about life not thinking about the same things as us. It's simple as that. Like he has, I think, 3 sons or 4 sons. He could not imagine, he or his wife could imagine like one of their sons being pulled over and shot in the back 7 times. Or having,
and just for the record, he mentioned that he would never agree with somebody like kneeling for the flag and whatnot.
yeah,
But
that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
But what he doesn't also have to think about is his son having a policeman kneel on his face until dead.
So how did that land on the black?
Now, I was out at the protest. They were like, you know, F Drew Brees, F the police.
Damn.
Like it was so thankfully, I'm not gonna say thankfully for him, luckily for him, his, you know, black teammates, some of whom have been activists since the Kaepernick thing, since Kaepernick took his stance or his knee, they reached out to him, like Malcolm Jenkins, and said, look, you got to walk this back, man. This is just, one, this is not your experience, and 2, we don't need your commentary. And he did walk it back, but it just shows,
Right.
you know, when you hear people talk about, oh, let's get back to the America we know and love, or a return to normalcy in America, who are they talking about?
Yeah.
Who was it good for? Like, who was it normal for? You know, return to what? Because again, Drew Brees, I don't really know the specific neighborhood he lives in, but I'm 100% sure that the police aren't patrolling looking for his sons breaking into cars. I know that with certainty. Yeah, I know that. He doesn't have to worry about many of the things, probably any of the things a middle class or you know, a socioeconomically disadvantaged person of any color has to worry about. So just listen. He doesn't need to talk, and I think he's taken that cue, and he's been quiet since.
Yeah, I mean, it like you said, man, it highlights a point. Like he genuinely thought that everything that he was saying was right and spot on.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really speak. It doesn't say that he's evil. It just says like because he backtracked and he apologized. But it's a lot of folks that will stand on that and just say, hey, you know, like I'm not even trying to understand where you're coming from, your experience, or anything like that.
they can't understand it, man. They've never had to deal with any of these things. And like I said, what is actually happening now is that, again, they're not even thinking about, oh, what if this happened? You know, these things happened to me. What the real focus of this is, well, what if I wasn't special? What if everybody had the same rights as me? What if I got treated like everybody else? They still can't think about, you know, no-knock warrants and somebody shooting you because they got to the wrong house with a no-knock warrant. That's not a thing.
Right, or stand your ground.
Yeah, they can't even think about that. Like that's the next level. They're not even going there. What they're thinking about is, okay, what if we treated Breonna Taylor like a person and we couldn't just do that and go home at night like nothing happened?
Man.
Yeah, that's what's actually happening. That is what's scaring them. They're not even thinking about being treated like that. They're thinking about not being able to do that kind of stuff and get away with it.
And it's just 2020, man.
Yes,
and
I know.
It's 2020.
Very well aware. Very well aware.
So You went to Howard. How many siblings you got?
I have two brothers.
Two
Both
brothers.
graduated. Yeah, two younger
Two
brothers.
brothers.
Both of them graduated.
Two brothers. So were you a role model? A positive role model?
Uh, that's a loaded question. That's a loaded. Look, I'll say I advocated for both of my brothers to go to Howard, and I think I got one of them was trying to go to like Louisiana Lafayette. I'm like, nah. My mama was trying to keep my youngest brother at home and go to Xavier. I'm like, nah. But I can't take credit. I didn't even know Howard University existed before, like I said, Eric Causey, who put me on game. He graduated the year before me. Both of his siblings, younger siblings, went to Howard. I'd say it was the best decision I made. My parents supported me, and they supported, my encouragement of my brothers going
So
to
you went
school.
because of Eric. He kind of guided you and was an influence on you to come to Howard.
Look, man, I was like, okay, like my parents are both educated. My mom has a 4-year degree. My dad ran a business. He has an associate's degree. So I'm like, okay, but they didn't know nothing outside of New Orleans.
Right.
They just NO. Like that's it. They just NO. But his parents, like I said, are both PhDs, and I'm like, hold on, if they letting their firstborn son go to this school that I've never heard of, let me look into it, right? And again, it just took me visiting him his freshman year, and I'm like, yeah, okay, it makes sense now. It makes sense. And like I say, it's the best decision. One of the first and best decision I got to make for myself. I encouraged both of my brothers. They both helped me move in freshman year. My youngest brother, he was like 10, and he was kicking it with the pals. Yeah, he was kicking it with the campus pals. We were moving to the campus. He was sold when he was 10. So yeah, so all of those things happened, man. And like I said, role model or not, they definitely, they did some things that I did at Howard. They did some, other things with, an example, I'll say, not necessarily a role model or a positive role model. I mean, we humans.
So we come in, we classmates, we come in 99. I remember it's hot, it's long lines, you know what I'm saying?
No AC.
No AC.
None of that.
Beautiful women though.
Yeah.
Beautiful women. So the long lines I really didn't mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what was it like for you, man, coming from New Orleans, the South?
From the NO, yeah. It was
What was
like
that
you
like,
said,
man?
man. It was the first time you just saw the level of diversity within, not only within the diaspora, but people who weren't like cash money, right? Like you saw the videos and stuff. Like I mean, they had different, black people, there's diversity in New Orleans among black people, but
Right.
like all of these, like this was a trip. Like you said, waiting in lines, those long lines, waiting on validation stickers and all of that kind of stuff, man. You just met so many people, like ice cream social and stuff. Like, who knew black people would have fun at the ice cream social? It was a trip, man. It was a trip, and that bonding experience. That's Drew Hall with no AC, no cable. That didn't exist. I don't even think we had no cell phones. Like cell phones was just becoming because you couldn't call home with the cell phone. It was like, you had 100 minutes a month to call locally. Like that was a cell phone. So it was just, cats just, when I think about Victor Blackwell on CNN, Braxton Booker on, NPR, like that, they stayed on the floor.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy, dog. Yeah.
Crazy.
That happened.
Crazy.
That happened. Second floor, third floor, fourth floor, Drew Hall, like all that kind of, like
That was the first fraternity you joined.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like we did this. We went through, everything a process. We went through that process
Yeah, that was
together.
crazy, man.
Yeah, man.
It was so great too, man. I had
That was
no.
us, man. That was
It was
us.
amazing, man.
And
But
I never
so
experienced nothing like that before.
when you get to Howard, are you a big fish in a little pond, little pond? I mean, a big fish in a little fish in a big pond. What's your, because you're. I mean, I look at Dave Durand, alpha male. This guy is pushy. This guy is.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
guy is cocky.
I'm from the NO
I'm
now.
like, is
Shark
this
in the
dude a
water.
freshman?
Yeah.
Like, is this dude a freshman? I was like, Dave Durant, the only senior that lives in Drew Hall. I didn't know he was a freshman or a senior. But so when you, what's your mind state of mind when you get
It's the
to
NO.
Howard, man? Are you thinking about like, man, I'm gonna be an alpha? Are you thinking about career? Like, what are you thinking about?
Again, shark in the water. You feel me? And I knew I wanted it to be the jock, the frat boy. I wanted to do all that since like middle school, right? And my first visit to Howard just like confirmed that was a possibility. I'm like, I can do all of that. I can get good grades and play baseball and like I can do all of that kind of stuff. So I'm like, yeah, this is home. But it's the NO, man. It's shark in the water, bro. It's shark in the water.
What's funny about New Orleans, man? I'm not even gonna lie. I'm gonna keep it 100, man. Like I remember, Cedric, Lacey. I used to hear them talk. I'd be like, yo, what are they? I couldn't understand nothing they were saying. So quietly, man, I didn't think they was like as smart as they were. So then we get to class. So we get to finance class, and we in the school to be. I didn't understand like shit in class. You know what I'm saying? Yo, Cedric is like, he gave like every answer right. Lacey gave like every answer right. Cedric brother, like I'm like literally, I didn't understand when they was talking to me. I didn't understand nothing they were saying.
I had econ with Al and Cedric brother, and I'm like, how do you know all of this?
And I'm telling you, man, if it wasn't for, I know Sean not from New Orleans, but like Lacey, Sean, Cedric, I mean, Katisha, she from Atlanta, but a lot of people it's funny, like when you get to Howard, you have these stereotypes about your own people. Oh, they're from the South, they slow. You know what I'm saying? Or this and that. Then you get to class with them, cats on it like boom, boom, boom. For me, that was just such an eye opener, man. It's such a blessing that, they helped me through college, man. Because I say to this day, without those people, I would not have made it, man, through college at all. Because I was not the most studious type, but they just made certain things like a norm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So at what point did you say to yourself, I want to be a member of Alpha?
Man, it's so Alpha happened. I was exploring, so I looked at all of the fraternities, and the way it happened. And I was talking to one of my friends who was going to Grambling at the same time. He had finished the year before me. He was at Grambling. He was considered, and he said, "Man, it come down to who you hang with, like who are the like-minded people around you." 6 of my line brothers are in Phi Sig.
Who are?
Yeah. So
who are they?
X,
X,
Byron.
another super smart.
Yeah.
Person. Byron, another super smart from the South.
Armand,
another super smart.
EK, BJ. Yeah, 6 of us are in Phi Sig.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, I didn't, I played baseball with a couple of, one Q. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
I looked at all of them, man. I even met, on a road trip, during my freshman year, I met this IOTA at Clark, Atlanta, and he gave me the same message. Is you're like-minded people who you cool with. You know, are y'all gonna go through this thing together? And, you know, when I first started like looking into who was doing it that year, like I said, 6 of us was in Phi Sig. I met Elliot and Durand and Harold. And it was just, yeah, these my people, man. These my
Crazy,
people.
man.
These my
That's
people. But I knew I'm doing the frat thing. Like that's happening. Like that's happening. Just like I knew I was going to college to do the jock thing. I you know, I gotta play baseball. Like football, I played in high school, but I hated football practice. The games were cool, but baseball was my thing, and I knew wherever I went, I needed that opportunity. Just like I knew I was gonna be.
so you had no was there any Alphas or Greeks in your family?
I had 2 uncles that are Kappas, and my dad would say, you know, he's a Marine, so that's a thing. So we have some joiners. We have some joiners. My brother Dean pledged Beta chapter in 2004.
So when you was at Howard, did you realize like the significance of like a beta chapter or alpha chapter? Like I know you learned it when you're going through it, but for me, I didn't realize how significant those things were probably until like 10 years after I graduated.
Yeah, it was
from
much later
Howard.
on, dog. It was much later on. You don't. I mean, because it's not like you have the option
Mm-hmm.
of pledging at another chapter, right? That's just the chapter at the school you went to, and then you know you start to learn about the history of it, and yeah, we like this thing started at Cornell, but then it really took off once it got to Howard. You see the other fraternities and sororities being founded at Howard, and yeah, you get a little cocky with it when you first start to know about that,
Yeah.
but you don't really understand the significance of what those people 120 years ago, 110 years ago were doing, man. That was radical. That was radical.
So when you say, okay, when you identified that you wanted to be a alpha, was it somebody in the fraternity that you kind of leaned on? Because a lot of people, you know, the thing about Howard, man, you have families like, oh, my grandfather was an alpha, my great grandfather, but then you have people that like, I'm just trying to make it to next semester, and I
Yeah,
want to be an alpha. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So you have all of these, and then Greek life is no real like blueprint to how you're supposed to express yourself, and because everybody says, well, do your research and look around, and but then there's always this gray area of like, I don't want to say the wrong thing to the wrong person. How did you
hmm
go about expressing your interest in doing research?
One of my baseball teammates, Richard Spencer, he was the tail of 2001.
Hmm.
And of course, I didn't know that until like the end of the baseball season the year before, but somebody I relied on. And then again, we had cats in Phi Sig. I mean,
Hmm.
Jarvis, Chinello, all of those guys were there. And you could bend the ear. Everybody wasn't as receptive as, everybody else. But I'd say, Richard Spencer, who played baseball with me at Howard, and who crossed the year before was somebody I could go to and say, okay, how should I go about these things?
Man. So what's that, your junior year?
It was my junior year.
It's your
Yes.
junior year, man. So we know that pledging, man, is tough. What was, for me, I remember thinking like, man, I can't be on campus. You know what I'm saying? I remember, and you know what I mean? I remember thinking like all the, because at that time it was only selfish reasons. It wasn't like I was like, hey, if I do something, I want to be more in the community. It was like, okay, I just want to be more popular. You know what I'm saying? That was it. And it was,
Yeah, man.
how did you take yourself to a place mentally where you knew you couldn't be on campus, and where you knew you was gonna be humbled at on a consistent basis, man.
You just commit, man. I hated every minute of it, and I would never do it again. But it's just, it's like I said, it's something I decided to do well before I got to Howard, man. I'm like, okay, if this is gonna be what it's gonna be, like, okay, let's see it through.
That's good to know. That's good to know, man.
Yeah, let's see it through. But to be clear, hated every minute of it and would never do it again. Yeah.
Well, that's what everybody says. Who
yeah.
Rarely do I meet somebody that says, "Man, I missed that." You know what I'm saying? I would do that again if I had the chance.
Nah.
What about how did it feel like when you crossed?
So one of my uncles who's a Kappa was there. My dad was there.
And you was 20 pounds lighter.
Yeah, that was. I wasn't gonna say I was in the best shape, but I was definitely the lightest I had been in my adult life. It was a trip, man, because you see, like, all of that work, that sacrifice. It wasn't just about the show, but you know where that came from,
right?
Like I looked at the probate tape, like I think it was like 2 years ago. I'm like, I can't believe this. Like it took all of this time to get to this place. And what we always talk about, if you look at the different probate tapes, you see the next line in the audience.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah. If you look at the tape, you could always see the cats on the next line in the audience. Wow. And I looked at 2001, and I was definitely out there. I mean, all of my LBs was out. Like, you could see the next line in the audience. So that's one thing that struck me from the probate, man. And it was a relief, man. It was a feeling of accomplishment. And yeah.
And senior year, it was only cracking, I'm sure. But
I stole a whole nother year by going and get the MBA. Yeah, I
forgot about that.
So I switched my major from finance to accounting because accounting had the 5th year MBA. That was part of the reason. I wasn't ready to graduate, man.
Damn. Genius. That's what you call evil genius right there.
Yeah, the only way you could do it was to be an accounting major and get the extra 30 hours so you could sit for the CPA exam. So I'm like, yeah, sign me up, done deal.
So, man, Phi Sig at Howard was around for like, I don't know, 20 years maybe? 15, I don't know how long.
91 to, I don't know when it ended, but 91 was the first one.
I mean, when we think about the people, man, what they doing right now, they came out of Phi Sig, and then you couple that with the fact that Phi Sig no longer exists. I mean, that is just heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking, man. I mean, you look up, because I follow everybody at Howard, and I'm like, man, even the dropouts of Phi Sig is still like, like me. You know what I'm saying? Like, they kicked me out of Phi Sig, and I was like the drop out of Phi Sig. I still got my own business. You know what I mean?
Back.
I'm like, damn. I'm just saying, like, the level of talent in Phi Sig, man, and to think it doesn't exist, anymore. What was it that drew you to Phi Sig?
Alex Dixon.
You see what I mean? He was my very first guest on the podcast.
Like, when you talk about, I was a senior living in Drew Hall, I thought Alex was a grown-ass married man. Like, he just doing this for like a semester.
Yeah.
Like, Alex, he's a role model, man. He's a role model. Yeah. He was, I didn't start the School of B until my sophomore year. And he was my team leader. Even though we stayed on the, second floor of Drew Hall that freshman year, I'm like, I just looked out how he went about his business. And I'm like, yeah, he really got it together. And
that nigga had it together.
Yeah. I'm like, I
was like, damn, like everything, bro. Like that man, like you said, certain cats, like you just say their name and
they just got it together, man.
their reputation precedes them. So like
Mm-hmm.
you knew he was gonna be successful,
Mm-hmm.
man. Guys like Alex Dixon. When I think about other people that impacted me without even really without even intentionally trying to, like
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Gray
Oh
in the
man,
school of
Mr.
business,
Gray, man, get your groceries. Come on, man.
right?
Get
Like
your groceries. Yeah.
I mean, it was cast that was just so sharp and on point. I'm like Mr. Gray. We could do a whole podcast on just like
Yeah.
on his energy, man,
Yeah,
alone.
man.
But
Get
yeah,
your
Alex Dixon.
groceries.
Yeah, I remember seeing Alex just like level up every single
Every
time,
time. Every time,
like
man.
like just level up, man. And
Like,
yeah,
have you been here before? Like, did you
yeah,
do this? Yeah, that's how I really look. I'm like, did you do all 4 years already and you coming back to do it again? Like, that's the level he was on.
that's
Like,
crazy.
yeah.
I would have never guessed that you would have been dean of Phi Sig, man. I would have never guessed that that was something you wanted to do.
I love
And
Phi
I
Sig,
don't even think
man.
I would have guessed that you would have been an alpha either.
Yeah, I love Phi Sig, man. It was like I'm not gonna say more than being an alpha, but I love Phi Sig just as much as I love playing baseball, just as much as I love being an alpha. I
Hmm.
love Phi Sig, man. The
Oh yeah, I
picnics,
mean,
the
yeah. I mean,
meetings, all of that. I love being a part of that organization. I love the people who are in it.
yeah.
I love the people I helped come into the organization, and in the people who helped me bring people into the organization. It was an excellent experience, Howard. I mean, you were there. It was
Yeah,
a great
no,
experience.
I love it too, man. So, what advice do you have for the 18-year-old David Durand, man, that's coming into Howard right now? You know, they want to be successful, man. They want to get good grades,
Yeah.
frat, uh, kick it,
Um,
excel.
I, I don't know, man. I learned so many lessons that freshman year. I definitely say just dive into the experience. Um, and listen to black women. Like, that's real. Um, you know, I had professors that year. I had classmates that year. You know, administrators in the A building who literally helped me get through it. So just dive into the experience. Like I said, I knew the broad strokes of what I wanted to, accomplish, or what I wanted my, college experience to be like. But you just got to open up and just know you got stuff to learn from people. So dive in and listen to all of these other, exceptional black people, and look at these examples and take what you can from it.
Let's talk a little bit about legacy, man. 50, let's say 50 years from now, man. What are we saying about David Anthony Durand?
Uh, yeah. So on the humble, man, like I said, I got two brothers who graduated. I got two cousins who, finished last year from pharmacy. One is about to finish. Well, I don't even know. Like, are they having school this year? He about to finish from engineering this year. I got nieces and nephews that I want to see go that route, man. But just from this education space here in New Orleans, if I can get more young people reading, and I'm not like using woke, but just reading, a bit more educated about their own history and embracing it, and then voting. And in 50 years that we don't have to ask nobody to create our society, we're doing it ourselves. That's a thing. Like I say, I always said, like, the reason I go to work every day is because I want to retire. I need these young people to have good jobs and pay property taxes so I can retire and not have to work, man. So yeah, if they can just, build a life for themselves and build it for their own selves. That's the legacy I'm trying to create, man.
Good stuff, man. So let's talk about, if somebody wants to get in contact with you, or if you want to let us know some of the projects that you're working on right now, how can people follow Dave Durand, or, if you have a cause that you're working on or that you're committed to, how can they contact you, and what are some of the things you got going on right now?
Yeah, it's so I just do the work, dog. I don't really do the social media. There's no following or whatever. You want to hit me up. David Durand Jr. at gmail.com. My thing is, man, the playbook has been the same for these people who trying to keep us out. Read and vote. Like, there's a reason they didn't want us to read. There's a reason they still don't want us to vote. It's as simple as that. And if neither one of those two things work, they brutalize our bodies or put us in prison. So it's like the playbook been the same for 400 years for them. So just get your game up and go vote. Early voting. I know a lot has been talked about with the mail-in voting, absentee, but early voting, make sure you're telling as many people as possible to vote. That's really where we at, man. That's really where we at. And like I said, David Durand, JR at gmail.com. Holler at me. I'll hit you back.
Dave, man, you've been a great guest, bruh.
Thank you for having me.
Good to catch up with you, man.
It is very much so good, man. Thank you for having me, bro. Much appreciated. Keep doing your thing, man. I'll be tuning in weekly, periodically. Whenever you put out a new one, I'll be watching, bro. Thank you very much.
For sure.
All right.
So let's see. Thank you for joining the HU Movemaker podcast, where we highlight folks that have contributed to the Howard legacy at the highest levels. To hear more interviews or purchase merchandise, please visit www.humovemakers.com.